have a bunch of people, professional politicians, super PAC puppets, following slogans handed over to them by their 400-page super PACs last week.
The super PAC supporting former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie's presidential campaign.
A super PAC supporting Ron DeSantis reportedly offered debate talking points to the Republicans' presidential campaign.
And Stewart will oversee his political action committee.
To a super PAC.
Through a super PAC. So your corporation donated $1.2 million to the Barack Obama super PAC.
No. To a super PAC that backs Obama.
If you've ever turned on the news recently, you've probably seen an influx of people talking about PACs and super PACs. But what exactly are PACs and super PACs? And why do so many people seem to have a problem with them? There are four main differences between a PAC and a super PAC: funding sources, spending limits, coordination with candidates, and disclosure agreements. Start with the first one. A PAC is a political action committee. Regular PACs are organizations often affiliated with corporations, labor unions, or special interest groups that can legally accept a limited amount of contributions from individuals, typically up to $5,000 per year. They use these funds to support specific candidates or political causes. Super PACs, on the other hand, are also political committees, but they are allowed to accept unlimited amount of contributions from individuals, corporations, and labor unions. Super PACs do not make direct contributions to candidates or parties, but can independently spend money to support or oppose candidates through advertising, direct mail, and other means. When it comes to spending limits, regular PACs are subject to contribution limits and expenditure limits when supporting or opposing candidates. They cannot accept contributions more than the prescribed limits, and their spending must adhere to these limits. Super PACs, on the other hand, can raise and spend unlimited sums of money, often in the support or opposition to political candidates. They are not subject to the same contribution or expenditure restrictions as regular PACs. Coordination with candidates. Regular PACs are subject to strict regulations regarding coordination with candidates. They are allowed to contribute their spending with the campaign of the candidates they support. They must operate independently. They are not allowed to coordinate with the spending with the campaign of the person they support. They must operate separately. Super PACs, on the other hand, can spend independently to support or oppose candidates, but they are not allowed to coordinate their activities with the candidates' campaigns. This independence is a key distinction that allows them to raise and spend unlimited amounts of funds. 4 is disclosure agreements. Regular PACs are required to disclose their contributors and expenditures to the Financial Election Commission, the FEC, regularly. These disclosures are public and provide transparency with their financial activities. While super PACs are also required to disclose their contributors and spending to the FEC, and this information is publicly available, however, some critics argue that the disclosure requirements for super PACs could be more straightened to enhance transparency. In summary, the main difference between PACs and super PACs revolve around their funding sources, contribution limits, spending limits, coordination rules with candidates, and disclosure agreements. Super PACs are notable for their ability to raise and spend unlimited amounts of funds independently to support or oppose any political candidate, while regular PACs are subject to more strict rules. So why are people generally against super PACs in particularly? Well, like I said before, super PACs can raise an unlimited amount of funds from wealthy individuals, corporations, and special interest groups. Critics argue that this allows a smaller number of donors to have an outsized influence on the political process, potentially drowning out the voices of ordinary citizens like me and you. Also, lack of transparency. While super PACs are required to disclose their contributors and expenditures, some critics argue that disclosure rules have to be more strict on them. They claim that dark money can flow through organizations with undisclosed donors, making it difficult for the public to know who is truly behind the funding of certain super PACs. Although super PACs are not allowed to coordinate directly with political candidates, There are concerns that they are still indirectly aligned with their efforts with specific candidates. The person in charge of a super PAC that is contributing money to a specific candidate can even be that candidate's former boss. Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart had a whole segment a while ago going over how ridiculous the rules regarding super PACs are and how it impedes the whole political process. It is a great segment that highlights the potential corruption that super PACs bring on. But how did it get like this? There's no way that this has always been the standard for political fundraising. Well, it hasn't. And it all starts with a Supreme Court case called Citizens United. The case revolved around a conservative nonprofit organization called Citizens United, which produced a documentary critical of Hillary Clinton, who was running for the Democratic presidential nominee in 2008. The Federal Election Commission sought to regulate the distribution of the documentary under campaign finance laws, arguing that it violated restrictions on corporate and union spending on elections. In a shocking 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Citizens United, overturning certain provisions of the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. The court's ruling that restrictions on corporate and union independent political expenditures in federal elections violated the First Amendment's protection of free speech. The majority opinion written by Justice Anthony Kennedy stated this: if the First Amendment has any force, it prohibits Congress from fining or jailing citizens or associations of citizens for engaging in political speech. Basically, in layman's terms, corporations are people too. And I know saying that out loud sounds absolutely ridiculous. Trust me, I know. Which is exactly why it had a 5-4 decision. For how absurd this ruling was, it stuck, and political campaigns have never been the same since. I understand this is a lot to take in, and I also understand learning all of this can make you feel overwhelmed and hopeless. It can also make you feel that the average voter does not matter. But there is still hope. In Speech Now v. FEC, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit Court issued a ruling in 2010. The court found that limits on contributions to Speech Now were unconstitutional, as they violated the organization's First Amendment right to freedom of speech, and quid pro quo corruption is almost impossible. Key word, almost impossible. But in U.S. v. Menendez, Senator Robert Menendez, accused of providing favors to a donor in exchange for the donor's contributions to a super PAC, supporting Menendez's political campaign. This arrangement is alleged to be an example of quid pro quo corruption. The statement suggests that what the DC Circuit had previously claimed, that such corruption through contributions to a super PAC was impossible, is now possible, and it is now considered a possible risk of quid pro quo corruption. This is interesting because the Supreme Court permits the regulation of campaign contributors when they pose a risk to quid pro quo corruption. It urges that large contributors to political candidates indeed create such a risk, and the Supreme Court has consistently acknowledged this. Since large contributors to a super PAC carry the same risk of quid pro quo corruption, they too should be subject to these regulations. We could potentially end all super PACs with this one loophole. But what makes me or anyone else think that the court will even hear a case like this again? Well, Citizens United ended with a 5-4 decision. And since then, there have been 4 people appointed to the United States Supreme Court. So it is possible that the court can swing in a new direction. In closing, we collectively have the power, not these corporations. When the founders wrote the Constitution, they wrote, "We the people," not "we the people and a few couple corporations." Together, we can make a better tomorrow for all of us. But tell me what you think. This is me, signing off.